What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about dun 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 The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. Guys, this is book number 3 in the First Law Trilogy, bringing our long journey to an end. Let's get into it. When the story begins, we're picking up with Glokta, who is now back in the Union. He's back in Adwa, and he's doing dirty work for Sult all over again. Essentially, the king's health is not doing so well, so the Inquisition is making a quick move on trying to make sure that they have a good play in who becomes the future king. So Glokta is basically running around the Union, just extorting and blackmailing everybody he can, trying to get these votes. Now, a fun part of this whole thing is that Sult has kind of pitted Superior Goyle against Glokta, trying to just kind of maximize productivity, I guess. But it's really funny because we just see how much more superior Glokta is than Goyle. And just, Glokta gets shit done. Now, in this book, we really get to see a lot of those relationships that Glokta has had to form, amongst the series. And they're all just kind of ringing home now here in this book. And some are just, calling in debts. Some are here to betray him. It's a whole bunch of shit all rolled up into one. And it was extremely enjoyable. Some of it is heartbreaking. But nonetheless, I enjoyed, Glokta's part in this book, just like the rest. I mean, it's all thumbs up, guys. He didn't fall off here in book 3. And then we pick up with the Dogman and the boys from the north. And this is when, we see Dogman is now the chief of the Northmen, and he's having to make those hard calls. And it's not exactly something that's easy for the Dogman. He doesn't see himself as that kind of guy. This job doesn't really fit him. Even though everybody else sees it that way, he doesn't. We also pick up with West, and now West and the Union are laying siege on a castle or a fortress that is held by Bethed's men. This is where we finally I feel like we're starting to see some measure of victory out of the Union. Things are starting to look a little brighter. Just, a little brighter. Then we pick up with the rest of our core characters. They're all kind of coming back from their journey to the end of the earth, and their journey, their mission was basically a failure. So they're returning back to the Union, back to Adwa, and they're not exactly in high spirits. This is actually where we see our cast, this little group, the party members separate ways. Once they get back to the Union, Logan heads north towards England, and this is when we're going to see him eventually reunite with his brothers. And I got to admit, this part in the story was actually very touching to me. And I don't know if it's just because I've been balls deep in the trilogy now that I'm invested in these characters and I've got, some emotions going. But when Logan shows up and reunites with his brothers from the north, it was a very touching thing for me. And that's just kind of weird because I don't normally get like that. We also we see Baez and Jazal really staying close to each other after they get back to the Union. And if you've been reading this trilogy through book 1 and book 2, you'd have to be a blind person not to see some kind of strange favoritism or grooming happening between Baez to Jazal through the first 2 books. And you're definitely still getting that vibe here in book 3 when they get back to Adwa. Things start to fall into place, and this is really interesting. For me, this was one of the most exciting parts of the book because things that had been happening for this whole time for 3 books, things are just finally starting to fall into place. The puzzle pieces are starting to fit in a very perfect way, and man, I have to say, some of this like Jazal Dan Luther Baez moments here in this book, I literally was out of my seat, just like, what? I mean, pretty intense. Like I said, there just felt like there was a lot of payoff here in this part of the storyline because of so much I guess, planting. So many seeds were sowed and like kind of tended to. Man, I'm screwing this up. That it really pays off. Like I said, I don't know. It was just so cool. Some of these, when things start to click, they click in such a big way. And now when we come to Pharaoh, basically because of the mission in book 2, the journey didn't really work out. They didn't get what they sought. So Pharaoh Malgin's like, her quest for revenge is starting to kind of crumble in front of her. And she's kind of pissed off at Baez because she's just like, dude, you promised me this revenge. You promised me, retribution. And she doesn't feel like she's getting it. But she does still stick around the Union because of the Gurkish invasion. So, throughout the book, we start to kind of get these hints that, yeah, she didn't get her revenge, but maybe she just might. The story is an amazing one, let's just face it. And Abercrombie is bringing everything that you love from book 1 and 2 and some more in this one. I do think that the pace is much faster than the other 2 books just because of the things that are falling into place, the tension that builds, the events that are happening. Everything is very much at the edge of your seat in this book, which just really makes you run through those pages like wildfire. I want to add that I do believe, like in Before They Are Hanged, that Abercrombie bumped up the action and some other elements. And I believe he does it again here in Last Argument of Kings. Especially like the action. The action is just as good and visceral as it was from book 2, but he adds like much more warfare to this. I feel like we get that good taste of war here in book 3. It goes well beyond the one-on-one duels or small skirmishes. We're just knee deep in this battle, and it's just well constructed. I could appreciate it, and I definitely noticed it. It seemed like a notch above what I had, what we were reading before from the earliest editions. So, boop, boop, a little amp up there, right? And again, I would say political intrigue and just the backstabbing and all that is super amplified in this book, more so than the other 2. I mean, there was plenty in the other 2, but this one is where it's on and cracking. There's been a lot of stuff happening behind the curtain, so to speak, and here we're getting little peeks behind that curtain, you know what I mean? And it's it's good. It's good, guys. Let's just put it at that. It's good. Also, another thing I really appreciated in this book was some of the characters just being true to their character. For one, Black Dow. Black Dow's been a son of a bitch through this whole series, and he certainly doesn't change his ways for nobody. And I can appreciate his, he's not really an arc because he doesn't change, but I can appreciate his part in the story, and I can appreciate him just being that bastard that he is. But the big one I think that came out here in this book was really Logan. I loved Logan Nine Fingers, and I honestly, throughout these videos, I've been, putting a lot of praise on him. But there's one thing that's always kind of gnawed in the back of my head about it is this is supposed to be one of the biggest, bloodiest bastards of the North. Just a terrifying man, but yet I've felt so comfortable around him, and he almost comes off like a nice, good guy, throughout the series. But finally, here in book 3, we get a really good taste of just how brutally dangerous it is to be friends or enemies with this guy. It certainly makes him a little bit more terrifying, and I feel like he lives up to some of that reputation finally. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, he is that bloody bastard from the North. All right, so you've heard me rant and rave about the book, but let's get into some stuff that maybe I just didn't like that much. And honestly, guys, I have to admit that I'm holding Abercrombie to like a higher standard than most authors, and I'm not even exactly sure why. I just end up doing this time after time. It could very well do with just the hype that surrounds his books, as well as being on the top of the heap, as far as top 10 lists and all that stuff. So maybe there is just, as much as I try to shed expectations, it's just there. Because I definitely went into this book with trying to be with no expectations whatsoever. And I was very pleased with the book, but there's still stuff that bugged me. I do think that the ending, it just didn't feel like the ending of a trilogy. it feels more like a book that's getting ready to ramp back up. And I guess I just had a lot of issues with that because right when I ended the book, I mean, I was really left a lot like the Blade itself, where book's closed and I'm going, what? What? I think I was a lot more satisfied than the Blade itself ending, even with the what's. Yeah, it's just a tough one. It sounds like I might not have liked the book. Like I said earlier, I love this book. I just don't see it as the end of a trilogy. It just there's some things that got buttoned up real well, and there's other things that were left very loose. It definitely ends on a cliffhanger, and that to me just isn't the kind of closure I guess I'm looking for in the end of a trilogy. Another thing that kind of bugs me about the book, I guess the books, is the magic system. And this is kind of weird because normally I can just let magic be magic. It doesn't have to be explained because, well, it's magic. But in this series or this trilogy, the magic system is very vague, it's very mysterious, but it almost feels like you're going to get to learn about it as the journey continues. And we certainly get to learn more about the art, the magic in this world in book 3 here, but not enough, I guess. Not enough to really satisfy me for some reason. So I was still left kind of going, man, I don't get this magic at all. Now, once again, this is also what I consider a low fantasy kind of world, so I don't know. I don't know what my hang up is about this whole magic thing in this series. I just felt like it's there, and it's so unexplainable that it kind of bugged me every time it pops up. It also, at times, seems a little anticlimactic, maybe even, which seems weird because the magic does do amazing things when it pops up, and sometimes even very destructive things. But still, for some reason, it just wasn't doing it for me. This book was, of course, another buddy read with my friend Gregory LaPerche. I'm going to put his channel down in the description. I gotta say, one of the things, too, that's been a lot of fun reading this trilogy was just, being able to communicate back and forth with him. We made a lot of predictions over the course of reading this trilogy, and it was actually kind of surprising how many of them we were right on, but it was a lot of fun. So you could almost say, too, that there's plenty of foreshadowing in this book that you can kind of tell what's going to happen before it does, but I wouldn't say it's so clear, you know what I mean? It's still very entertaining and it still draws you in. It's not done poorly. But yeah, it was a lot of fun reading through this trilogy, and I got to give Gregory a thumbs up because I don't know how fast I would have got back to the first Law World if it wasn't for his suggestion. I'm sure his review will be out this Friday, so keep an eye out for that. As well as I want to give a shout out to Madison Goodyear because I don't normally listen to audiobooks. I like to read because I have a hard time retaining or even paying attention to the audiobook, but I don't have a whole lot of audiobook experience. Now, Madison has a tier list on her channel, and it's a audiobook narrator tier list. I actually heard her talk about this guy, Stephen Pacey, who narrates the First Law books, and so I was just like, you know what, I'm going to check it out. I have Audible, and I have all these credits because I never use them because I'm not listening to audiobooks. So I checked it out, and honestly, this is the first time I've ever was able to really pay attention, really be engaged. I feel like Stephen Pacey does an amazing job. He knocks it out of the park. And I'm going to put Madison's the link to that video in the description as well. I think this is a good thing to talk about, guys, because I don't talk about audiobooks, but for the slow and the struggling, sometimes these things are a godsend. They can get you out of a reading slump, or maybe you're just a very productive person and you don't got time to sit on your ass and read a book, but you do have time to throw in some earbuds while you do the dishes and whatnot. So they're definitely a very good option to have. So by all means, go check out that video. Now for my 2 cents for the slow and the struggling. Guys, I mean, if you've been paying attention through these reviews, it's just going to be the same thing. Realistically, for both of you guys, the struggling reader, it's just the fact that Joe Abercrombie's prose is a little more dense. It's a little more classical than the more modern style of fantasy, so you can get tripped up in there. And also, is just with both of you guys, the slow and the struggling, is if you're thinking, hey, is this worth my time? I would say as far as the trilogy as a whole is absolutely worth your time. I know that throughout this journey, I've had plenty of gripes, but I'm telling you guys, it's not a waste of your time. There's a reason why it's so highly praised. You know what I mean? Even with the issues I hold, I still found a way to come out loving the hell out of this series. So it's worth the time. Alright guys, so I just want to take a minute and say thanks for spending some time down here at the channel. And to Joe Abercrombie, bam, brother, big old thumbs up. I mean, this was a great trilogy. I can understand why people, you know, dig your shit, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting into some more of the First Law editions, because I think the next one is Best Served Cold. That's the one I think I'm going to be picking up next. Don't know when I'm going to be getting into it, but it'll definitely be the next one that I pick up. If any of you guys are interested in talking about the First Law trilogy or other grimdark works, we have a Discord, a channel Discord. I'll put that link down in the description as well. Come and join us and talk about these books, guys. We're just really waiting on more people to join the fold. So yeah, as always, guys, peace.